When the courtroom door swung open and every head turned, I heard my wife's voice before I saw her face. "Your Honor, my husband can barely walk. Some days he doesn't even know his own name." My boots hit the polished floor one slow step at a time. The judge's chair creaked. Papers went still. I straightened my back, let go of the rail, and walked down the aisle. Dana finally glanced over her shoulder. Her face went white. "Donna," I said slow and clear so everybody in that Lynn County courtroom could hear. "I walked in here the same way I walked you down the aisle in '93, on my own 2 feet. Nobody said a thing after that. Even the air conditioner sounded guilty. You want to know how we got there? How a retired tractor mechanic from Cedar Rapids ended up proving he was still alive in court, while his own wife tried to bury him on paper. It didn't start in that courthouse. It started in a hospital room. When the doctors told me I had 7 days left, my wife leaned close, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "Finally, just a few days. Your house and your money are mine now." She never saw me open my eyes again. My name is Michael Harrison, but everyone calls me Mike. I'm 58, born and raised in Iowa. I spent 35 years at the John Deere plant, same steel-toe boots, same time clock, same lunchbox. I figured retirement would be fishing at Cedar Lake, watching the Hawkeyes on TV, and fixing neighbors' mowers for gas money. Instead, one cold Tuesday afternoon, my heart stuttered while I was hauling salt bags out of the garage. Pain shot across my chest and down my left arm. My legs turned to rubber. Next thing I knew, I was staring at the ceiling of an ambulance, listening to a paramedic tell me to breathe. Mercy Medical Center smelled like bleach and burned coffee. They wired me to a monitor, stuck an IV in my arm, and parked me in a small room with a view of a brick wall. Every beep sounded like a countdown. The cardiologist stood at the foot of my bed with a chart in his hands. Tall guy, tired eyes, ring on his finger worn thin. "Mr. Harrison," he said, "you've got some serious blockage. The good news is we can treat it, but you need to understand this is nothing to play with. If you ignore the medications and the diet, things could turn bad quickly. I'm talking days, not months." Days, that word stayed with me. He went over pills with names I couldn't pronounce: low-sodium diet, no heavy lifting, no stress. I nodded like I was listening. Mostly I was listening to my heart thump under the wires. "Is your wife here?" he asked. "She was parking the car when they brought me up," I said. He checked his watch. "All right, I'll come back and talk to both of you. This is something you two need to hear together." When he left, the room felt too quiet. I heard nurses in the hallway, a TV droning about weather somewhere else, a cart squeaking over a bad tile. My mouth was so dry I could have chewed the air. 10, maybe 15 minutes later, Dana breezed in. She smelled like perfume and cold air from the parking ramp. Her blonde hair was sprayed into place. You'd think she was headed to a brunch, not the cardiac floor. "Oh my God, Mike," she said just a touch too loud. "You scared me half to death." She gave me a quick kiss on the forehead. Her lipstick was perfect. Her eyes were dry. "You okay?" I asked. "I should be asking you that," she said, but she was already looking around the room, taking inventory of machines and tubes like she was pricing them. The doctor came back and did his speech again. This time Dana stood by my bed, nodding slowly, lips pressed, hand on my arm. To anyone else, she looked like a devoted wife from a hospital commercial. 7 days, she repeated when he mentioned the worst-case scenario. "It could be that fast, it could," he said, "or it could be longer. We're not writing anything in stone tonight, but the keys are medication, low-sodium diet, no missed doses, and no unnecessary stress. We'll take good care of him," she said, patting my arm. "He'll do exactly what you say." To the doctor, that probably sounded comforting. To me, her hand felt like a paperweight. When the door closed behind him, the machines kept beeping. Dana's fingers tightened on my arm and then let go. She fussed with my blanket, smoothing it once, twice, way more than it needed. Then she leaned down so close I could feel her breath in my ear. Finally, she whispered, voice low and steady, "Just a few days. Your house and your money are mine now." She straightened up, gave the blanket one last tug, and patted my hand like she'd just tucked me in. My whole body went cold. For a second, I thought maybe the meds were messing with my head, that I'd misheard. So I stayed perfectly still, eyes closed, listening. She didn't sound scared. She didn't sound sad. She sounded relieved. She kissed my forehead like she'd done for 31 years, checked her watch, and murmured almost to herself, "Visiting hours end in 8 minutes. Good." Then her heels clicked across the linoleum and out into the hall. At home, they always sounded slow dragging. Out there, they sounded light, almost happy. The door shut behind her. I opened my eyes. Same stained ceiling tile, same green numbers on the monitor, same IV drip ticking away. Nothing in my life was the same anymore. I lay there staring up at the tiles, my heart pounding against the electrodes, and one clear thought pushed through the fog. She's been waiting for this. That was when Ruth walked in. If you've ever spent time in a church basement or hospital waiting room in Iowa, you've met a woman like Ruth Alvarez. Late 60s, gray hair, pulled back, sturdy shoes cardigan that had seen a few winters. "Well now," she said, seeing my eyes open, "you look more alive than your chart says." "Hey, Ruth, I managed." She pulled up the chair and sat. "Your wife just about ran me over in the hallway," she said. "Didn't even see me." "She's got plans," I said before I could stop myself. Ruth's eyebrows went up just a little. Years of working with old farmers and their wives had taught her when to keep quiet. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. "Ruth," I said, my throat tight, "if I tell you something, can you keep it between us for a while?" "As long as it doesn't involve me pretending you died when you didn't," she said. "We'd have a problem there." A short, bitter laugh slipped out. "No, I'm trying not to die." "Good," she said. "Then talk." So I told her. Every word Donna had just breathed into my ear. No extras, no drama added, just the words. Ruth sat still for a long beat. Then she let out a low whistle. "Well," she said, "that's uglier than the coffee at the VFW." "What am I supposed to do with that?" I asked. My voice cracked on the last word. She leaned in a little. "First thing, you don't go back in that house until you're sure the person handing you your pills isn't cheering for the side effects." Anger and heartbreak twisted together in my chest. I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. "Second thing," she said, "if your wife thinks she's counting down your last 7 days, maybe you use those 7 days for something other than lying here waiting to see if she's right." "Like what?" I whispered. "Like finding out exactly what she's been up to while you were busy staying married." I took a breath that hurt all the way down and let it out slow. "Ruth," I said, feeling the words settle into place, "help me, and you'll never have to work again." She studied my face like she was checking whether I knew what I was saying. "I've heard a lot of wild promises in hospital rooms," she said. "You mean that one?" "I do." She looked toward the door where Dana had gone, then back at me. "All right then," she said. "Let's make sure you live long enough to cause some trouble." Ruth didn't waste time. The morning after Dana whispered her little countdown into my ear, Ruth showed up at Mercy Medical Center with discharge papers, a tote bag full of basic supplies, and a look on her face that told me arguing wasn't an option. "You're not going home," she said. "Not while she's waiting for the Grim Reaper like he's bringing her a new car." I didn't have the strength to laugh, but the corner of my mouth twitched. That was enough for her. Within an hour, I was in the passenger seat of her old Subaru heart monitor leads, gone a paper grocery bag of medications in my lap, and a discharge note tucked into her purse like contraband. She drove me to a small Airbnb on the outskirts of Cedar Rapids, an old guest house behind a friend's property near Mount Vernon Road. It had a single bed, a recliner, and a kitchen the size of a closet, but it was quiet. Safe. Mine. First thing Ruth said, setting my medications on the counter, "We stabilize your heart." Second thing, we find out exactly what that woman's been doing. I lay back in the recliner chest, still sore, but clearer than the night before. I don't even know where to start. "Oh, I do," she said, pulling out her phone. And that's how the investigation began. We didn't do anything sneaky or illegal. Dana and I shared accounts at Collins Community Credit Union for over 20 years. I had every right to check them. Ruth sat beside me with her glasses down her nose while I logged in from my old laptop, hands trembling more from nerves than the heart meds. The first thing we saw hit me like a shovel to the gut. $18,000, I whispered. Transferred 2 days earlier, straight into an account I'd never seen. Ruth tilted her head. "Looks like someone wasn't expecting you to make it through the weekend." My throat tightened. "That's our emergency fund, our retirement buffer." "Well," Ruth said gently, maybe she felt she was retiring early. I closed my eyes. My pulse thudded in my neck. Then my phone buzzed. Tyler. My boy, my only kid. 28 HVAC tech, strong as an ox, but soft where it counted. I answered. Hey, son. Dad. He sounded out of breath, probably between service calls. Mom said you were too confused to talk yesterday. Are you okay? What's going on? Confused. Of course she told him that. I'm all right, I said slowly, resting somewhere quiet. He hesitated. Do you need me there? God, I wanted to say yes. But if Tyler showed up, Dana would smell something off before I took my next pill. Not yet, I said. I'll explain soon, I promise. All right, he murmured, but I could hear the worry. When the call ended, Ruth patted my shoulder. One day at a time, Mike. Focus. I swallowed hard and nodded. Next, she asked. Home camera, I said. The front door one. We still had a shared family account logged into my email. I clicked the app and several thumbnails popped up. One from the evening before, Dana standing on the front porch, phone pressed to her ear, the porch light hitting her hair just right, like she wanted the world to see how tragic she looked. Ruth tapped the screen. Let's hear it. The audio loaded. I wasn't prepared. Dana's voice crisp and cheerful. Once the funeral's over, I'm putting the house on the market before the grass even grows on his grave. Yeah, I already got pre-approved for that condo in Naples. Ruth froze. I froze. My heart didn't stutter this time, it slammed. That's, Ruth blinked. That's a real Midwest expression, but Lord have mercy, I've never heard it said with that much enthusiasm. I covered my face with my hands. 31 years married, Ruth. I know. 31. I know, sweetheart. We sat there in silence a while. The only sound was the tiny kitchen clock ticking like it was counting down to something. Finally, I said, we're not done yet. Insurance, she asked. I nodded. Ruth dug into her tote bag, pulled out a folder she'd taken from my house months earlier when I was reorganizing. Start there. I opened it. Bills, policies, old tax returns. Nothing unusual until I saw it. The life insurance form. $750. Not $250,000 like it used to be. Increased just 3 weeks before my first chest pain. I stared at the date, my mouth dry. This was the same day I told her I felt a little flutter. Ruth crossed herself. Mike, this isn't a woman who panicked. This is a woman who planned. I leaned back, my breath shaking. She didn't want me to die. She expected me to. And she was preparing for the payout, Ruth added quietly. I felt something inside me crack. Not my heart, my denial. By late afternoon, Ruth heated up some canned soup and forced me to eat. I only managed a few bites. The truth was heavier than food. But the day wasn't done with me yet. Ruth stepped out to make a phone call, and I sat on the recliner scrolling through emails on my tablet, trying to ignore the dull ache in my chest. Then an email notification popped up from my wife's account, one still synced from years ago, because we used to share calendars. A meeting reminder. Appointment with Harold Pierce, estate and probate attorney. Not next month, not next week. Yesterday. My blood turned cold. Oh no, Ruth muttered behind me. Not that man. You know him. Everybody knows him. He's notorious in Lynn County for squeezing every dime out of widows and old folks. If she's working with him, she's trying to fast-track something. Something. My estate, my assets, my life. I pressed a fist to my sternum, not from pain, but from fury. What do? I asked quietly. Ruth exhaled. You get smarter and quieter and meaner than she ever expected. Before I could answer, headlights drifted across the wall. Ruth moved to the window, lifted the blind with 2 fingers. Mike, she whispered, don't panic, but that car has driven past here 3 times. A dark SUV coasted slowly down the gravel drive, paused, then continued. Dana's PI. She must have hired someone when she realized the hospital wasn't giving updates fast enough. Get away from the window, Ruth whispered. Now. I sank lower in the recliner, heart thudding for real this time. My pulse spiked and the ache in my chest pushed hard, reminding me my body wasn't back to full strength. Ruth pulled the blinds closed, turned off the lamp, and stood guard by the front door. For a long minute, neither of us breathed. Finally, the car rolled away. Ruth sat down, wiped her forehead, and muttered, Lord help us. You weren't kidding, your last 7 days might be busy. I let out a shaky breath. Ruth, what now? She leaned forward, eyes steady. Now, she said, we start fighting back. The next few days inside that little Airbnb felt like living in a shed behind my own life. I kept the blinds closed, took my pills on schedule, and tried to breathe slow enough that my heart didn't get any ideas. Some folks say recovery is peaceful. Mine felt like waiting behind a barn door during a storm hoping the hinges held. Ruth came every morning with groceries, a thermos of church coffee, and a determined look that said she'd already done half a day's work before 9 a.m. She checked my pulse, shoved oatmeal into me, and then sat down with a notebook like we were planning a farm auction. Today, she said on Thursday, we're checking patterns. People show their truth in patterns. She wasn't wrong. By noon, we had a timeline sprawled across the little Airbnb table. The insurance increase, the unexplained withdrawals, the appointment with the probate attorney, the camera audio about selling the house before the grass grew on my grave. Every arrow pointed one direction. Dana wasn't panicking. Dana was preparing. It should have broken my heart. Instead, it steeled something in me I didn't know I had left. That evening, just as I'd settled into the recliner with my meds lined up like unruly kindergartners, my phone buzzed. Tyler. Dad, quick question. His voice sounded cautious, as if he were stepping on an icy porch. Did she tell you she was having some friends over tonight? No, I said slowly. Oh, he hesitated. Because she called me to fix the thermostat before her girls' night. It wasn't broken, and I heard her tell Aunt Sandy on the phone, by this time next week, everything will be settled. I gripped the armrest. Settled how? His voice dropped. She didn't say. Dad, something feels off. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Tyler had always been close to Dana, always believed the best in her. He got his soft heart from me, his blind spots too. Son, I said, steadying my voice, just listen for now, okay? Watch things, don't confront her. I'll explain when I'm able. Okay, a long pause, Dad. Just don't lie to me. Are you really safe? I swallowed hard. I'm safer than I was. He let out a breath that told me he'd been holding far too much inside. Call me when you can, he said. Please. When the call ended, I just sat there staring at my phone. It hurt knowing my son was caught between fear for me and loyalty toward his mother. But this was the price of 31 years of assumptions that my marriage was built on something steadier than appearances. Ruth walked in a few minutes later with a bag of canned soup and saw my face. Tyler, she asked. Yeah. She set the bag down and squeezed my shoulder. He'll come around. Good kids do, even if it takes them a minute. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. That night, Ruth insisted we check the front door camera again. People get sloppy when they think they've already won, she said. She was right. At 8:14 p.m., the footage showed Dana's girls' night, starting wine glasses in hand, porch light glowing warm. I tapped the audio button. Friend. How are you holding up, sweetie Dana? With a little laugh. Honestly, I'm counting the days. The guest room already smells like hospital. I bought new curtains for when it's finally mine again. Ruth froze, eyebrows rising to her hairline. Oh, that woman is asking for the Lord's attention. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My chest tightened, not from my heart condition this time, but from 31 years crashing into one moment of clarity. I'd never hated anyone in my life, but I hated her then. The next morning, I tried to distract myself by cleaning the Airbnb kitchen, which took all of 5 minutes. When I turned around, I spotted the old file folder Ruth had brought earlier in the week. I hadn't looked inside since that first shocking insurance increase. Something nudged me, maybe instinct, maybe stubbornness, and I opened it again. Buried under tax returns and warranty papers was a small notebook I didn't recognize. Pink cover, spiral binding slightly bent, Dana's handwriting on the inside flap. After Mike retires options. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages. Bullet points, dates, little complaints disguised as planning. Don't want to spend my 50s in this small house. He won't push himself, won't change careers. I deserve a better life. If something happened, things would be easier. I closed the notebook slowly. Ruth, who had been standing quietly by the door, said, "That's not a woman who snapped under pressure. That's a woman who's been rewriting the script for a long time." I sat down hard. You think you'll know when someone stops loving you. Truth is, it sometimes slips away like a draft under a door. You don't feel it until the cold finally hits your bones. I ran a hand over my face. Ruth, why didn't I see this? You were busy loving your wife, she said gently. Some folks don't return what they're given. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Tyler's going to hate hearing all this. He'll hate that it's true, she corrected, not that you told him. By Friday afternoon, Ruth had made another decision for me, one I was too exhausted to fight. "We're getting you a lawyer," she said, pulling her coat on, "and not the crook your wife hired." "I don't have the energy for court battles," I muttered. "You don't need energy," she said firmly. "You need protection." That's how we ended up sitting across from Jonathan Pierce, a gray-haired attorney in his early 60s, with a tidy office above a bakery that smelled like fresh cinnamon rolls. Jonathan listened without interrupting, tapping a pen against a yellow legal pad now and then. When we finished, he let out a long breath through his nose. "Well, he said she's not subtle, I'll give her that." "Can she take everything I asked?" "Not legally," he said, "but she can make life hell for you until a court stops her, which means we start the clock before she does." Within an hour, Jonathan drafted a revocable trust for the house, a removal of Dana as beneficiary, temporary authority for Ruth to handle emergency decisions, a notice to block financial changes pending review. "This will slow her down," he said. "If she tries anything now, a judge will see the pattern." I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. Ruth patted my hand. "Told you, one bite at a time." Just when I thought the day couldn't get heavier, Jonathan pointed to the window. "Mike," he said quietly, "is that your son?" I turned. Tyler, standing on the sidewalk, staring up at the law office door like he wasn't sure he belonged there. My heart thudded. He came in slowly, eyes darting between me, Ruth, and the lawyer. "Dad," he said, voice tight, "Mom said you're getting worse and refusing help, but I just saw you walk up these stairs." I looked at him, my boy, the one person who never deserved to be caught in this. His jaw was clenched, confusion written all over him. "Son," I said quietly, "it's time you knew the truth." He swallowed hard. "Tell me everything." Ruth stepped aside. Jonathan folded his hands. "And I finally told my son what his mother had whispered over my hospital bed. Every word." When I finished, Tyler just sat there staring at the floor. His face didn't change, but his knuckles went white around the arms of the chair. After a long moment, he said softly, "Dad, I'm so sorry." Then louder, "I'm with you. Whatever comes next, I'm with you." I closed my eyes. For the first time in days, the tightness in my chest loosened. And that's when I knew this wasn't just survival anymore. This was a fight. And I wasn't fighting it alone. Jonathan warned me that court hearings in Lynn County rarely ran on schedule. "Expect delays," he'd said. "Expect nonsense. What you shouldn't expect is fairness until you force fairness into the room." I didn't sleep the night before the hearing. Not because of fear. Fear had burned itself out somewhere between the insurance papers and the camera recording, but because of something sharper, colder. Resolve. By sunrise, Ruth had already made coffee, packed my medication, and ironed the shirt she insisted I wear. "You're walking into a battlefield," she said, buttoning the collar like she'd done it her whole life. "Even soldiers shine their boots." Tyler arrived a few minutes later, still wearing his HVAC work jacket, hair damp from a hurried shower. He looked older than he had a week ago, like the last few nights had added a decade. "You sure you're ready, Dad?" he asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." He nodded, jaw tight. "Then let's go." The courthouse steps felt longer than they'd ever looked. I took them at my pace, slow, steady, one hand on the railing. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted every breath to remind me I was still alive. Inside, the hallway buzzed with the usual courthouse sounds, shoes on tile, muffled conversations, an old man coughing into a handkerchief. The clerk pointed us to courtroom 3B. Donna was already there. She sat at the petitioner's table beside her attorney, Harold Pierce, the man with the hungry eyes and the suit that looked a size too expensive for his soul. Dana wore black as if mourning. Her hair was perfect, her posture polished, her expression soft with manufactured grief. Tyler stiffened beside me. "Dad," he whispered, "she looks like she's going to a funeral." "Yeah," I said. She just didn't expect the guest of honor to walk in. We sat in the back until the bailiff called the case. I stayed seated, deliberately let her think I wasn't coming. Let her get comfortable. Then the judge walked in, robes, swishing glasses perched low on her nose. "Case of Harrison versus Harrison," she announced. "Petition for emergency asset control due to spousal incapacitation." Incapacitation. I nearly laughed. Harold rose with a stack of papers. "Your Honor, my client is acting out of compassion. Her husband, Mr. Michael Harrison, is medically declining, mentally unstable, and unable to manage his affairs. We are requesting immediate control of—" The door creaked. Hard. Every head turned. I stepped inside. Slow, calm, upright. My boots hit the polished floor like punctuation marks. Dana's hand froze where it rested on her purse. Her face drained of color until she looked like someone who'd seen a ghost. Your Honor, Harold sputtered. This isn't. He was not expected. The judge lifted her hand. Mr. Harrison, are you able to approach? I am, I said. I walked past the rows of seats, past the staring spectators, past the bailiff, who looked like he wasn't sure if he should catch me or salute me. I stopped halfway down the aisle right where I wanted to be and looked straight at my wife. Dana, I said loud enough to echo. I walked in here the same way I walked you down the aisle in '93, on my own 2 feet. A few people gasped. One older woman whispered, Lord have mercy. Even the judge straightened in her chair. Dana shot to her feet. Your Honor, he shouldn't be here. He's delusional. He's unstable. The judge held up a hand. Mrs. Harrison, sit down. Dana obeyed, shaking. The judge turned toward me. Mr. Harrison, do you understand what your wife has filed today? Yes, ma'am, I said. And I also understand what she tried to do while I was lying in a hospital bed. Jonathan rose smooth as always. Your Honor, we have evidence we'd like to submit. He handed over bank statements showing the $18,000 withdrawal. The life insurance increased from $250,000 to $750,000. The appointment logs for Harold Pierce, a written medical report confirming I was not terminal, and finally, the recording from the front door camera. When Jonathan pressed play, the courtroom went silent. Dana's voice filled the speakers, bright and casual. Once the funeral's over, I'm putting the house on the market before the grass even grows on his grave. Yeah, I already got pre-approved for that condo in Naples. A ripple of shock spread through the benches, people shifting, whispering, shaking their heads. One older man muttered, Good Lord. Harold sputtered, Your Honor, that audio is taken completely out of... It speaks for itself, the judge snapped. Then she looked at me. Mr. Harrison, in your own words, are you incapacitated? I let the moment breathe. No, ma'am, I said. My heart's bruised, but my mind's just fine. Tyler stood up in the back. Your Honor, he walked up 2 flights of stairs to come here. I saw it myself. Donna spun around. Tyler, sit down. But he didn't. He looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. The judge adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Harrison, do you deny saying these things? Dana straightened, tried to pull herself together. I was overwhelmed. Grief does strange things. Grief, I said, stepping forward. You told people you were counting the days. You bought new curtains for the room you thought I'd die in. Dana's face twisted. That's not, you don't understand. No, I said quietly, but the court does. The judge rapped her gavel lightly. Petition denied. Furthermore, based on the evidence provided, especially the audio recording, I am referring this case for investigation into attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Harold sank in his chair. Dana's mouth fell open. You can't do this. I waited 31 years for this. Security stood beside her. She jerked away, voice rising. This isn't fair. He was supposed to die. The room gasped. Even the bailiff flinched. Tyler bowed his head, heartbroken. The judge stared at Dana with an expression colder than steel. Mrs. Harrison, please remove yourself from the courtroom before I hold you in contempt. As security guided her toward the exit, Dana twisted her neck to look back at me one last time. But I didn't meet her eyes. I was looking at my son, who wiped his face with the back of his hand and gave me a small broken nod. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt light. Not healed, but free. When we stepped out of that courtroom, the cold Iowa air hit me like a baptism. Not painful, not shocking, just clean. The kind of cold that wakes up the parts of you that fell asleep years ago. Tyler walked beside me, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. He didn't talk at first. Neither did I. We just stood at the top of the courthouse steps watching people spill out onto the sidewalk like nothing extraordinary had happened inside. Finally, he said, Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at him. Really looked at him, the worry lines that hadn't been there a month ago, the way he kept swallowing like he had words stuck in his throat. You didn't do anything wrong, son. I should have known something wasn't right. I should have seen it. You saw what you were meant to see, I said gently. Your mother worked hard to make sure everyone saw what she wanted. He nodded, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. I can't believe she said those things. About selling the house. About you not knowing your own name. I couldn't believe it either, I admitted. But believing or not, it happened, and now we move forward. Tyler stared out at the parking lot. I'm with you, Dad, whatever you need. Hearing that from him, my only kid, my pride, my biggest piece of unfinished work, it steadied something inside me that had been shaking for weeks. Good, I said, because I'm not done living yet. Ruth met us at the bottom of the steps, waving a thermos in the air. Well, she demanded. Petition denied, I said. And the referral, she asked. Filed. Ruth clapped her hands once, sharp and satisfied. Look at God. Tyler cracked the smallest smile. We all stood there a minute, my son and Ruth, the woman who'd stepped into the role of lifeline with more courage than I ever expected. I didn't hug her. She didn't hug me. But she touched my forearm and said quietly, You did good, Mike. No one had said that to me in a long time. The weeks that followed were quiet but full. The investigation into Dana and Harold Pierce moved faster than I expected. Once the insurance company saw the increased date lined up with my first reported chest pain, and the bank flagged the $18,000 transfer, they opened their own inquiry. Suddenly, Dana wasn't the grieving wife, she was a person of interest. Every time the phone rang, I braced myself, but none of it hurt as much as the betrayal already had. The worst was behind me. As for the house, well, the judge's order froze everything until the divorce proceedings finished. Jonathan handled all the filings. I didn't have to step foot into another courtroom, at least not yet. Dana tried calling Tyler twice. He didn't answer. He blocked her number after the second voicemail. He didn't tell me what she said. I didn't ask. Some wounds you don't poke. One Saturday morning, about 3 weeks after the hearing, Ruth showed up with a manila envelope and a nervous smile. What's that? I asked. Open it, she said. Inside was the final statement from her mortgage company, stamped paid in full. I looked up at her, startled. Ruth, I told you I'd compensate you. I didn't mean this. This is too much. That's not your mortgage, she said softly. It's mine. I blinked. Ruth. No, she said, holding up a hand. You listen. You asked me to help you. You kept your word, and I'm keeping mine. What did I ever do to deserve this? I whispered. You lived, she said, and you fought, and you reminded me that doing the right thing still matters. My throat went tight. I had to stare at the kitchen counter for a minute before I trusted myself to speak. You're a good woman, Ruth. I know, she said lightly, but it's nice to hear it. She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Mike, she said, just promise me one thing. What's that? When you grill burgers this summer, save me a chair on that new dock. I smiled, an honest one this time, not the kind you force when your world is falling apart. Ruth, I said, that chair's had your name on it since the day you saved my life. She nodded once and walked out into the morning sunlight like she'd been carrying the whole sky, and finally set it down. A few evenings later, Tyler and I stood on the half-repaired dock behind the Airbnb owner's property. The lake rolled gently against the posts. A couple of ducks glided past. The sun dipped low, painting the water orange. Dad, Tyler said quietly, is it weird that I don't miss Mom the way I thought I would? No, I said, it's just honest. He nodded, kicking a pebble into the water. I'm glad you're okay. Me too, I said, more than you know. We stood there in silence, father and son breathing the same cool air, watching the same slow sunset. And for the first time in a long time, I felt steady. Not healed, not finished, just steady and alive. If you're listening to this, maybe someone's counted you out too. Maybe someone decided your story was over long before you stopped turning the pages. Don't let them. Don't hand over your life, your worth, or your voice to someone who's already rehearsing your exit. Stand up even if your legs shake. Tell the truth even if it cracks your world open. And remember, the people worth keeping are the ones who stand with you when the floor drops out. If my story meant something to you, stick around, share it if you want, or just take a quiet moment to breathe and remind yourself. Your ending belongs to you.